In the 1990s, when you would walk into a bookstore, there was a series of books that seemed to be occupying a whole shelf in every single bookstore that were out there. They were very easily identified. They had yellow covers. They were written on just about every topic, any topic you could imagine. And they were all written for the same group of people. I think you know what I'm talking about. They were the books for dummies. There was computers for dummies, Microsoft Word for dummies, cupcakes for dummies, skydiving for dummies. And there was even a book called Christianity for Dummies. I remember seeing that and thinking, that's the book for me. I was thinking, if I was able to write a book called Christianity for Dummies, like how would you make this simple? It would have 3 chapters. Chapter 1 would be God loves us. Chapter 2, we love God. And chapter 3, we love one another. The starting point of our faith is that God has first loved us. St. John said this in his first letter, love consists of this, not that we love God, but God has first loved us. This is the foundation of our faith. God took the initiative. God didn't wait for us to get our act together before he loved us. And our love for God, our call to know and love God, is a response to the God who makes himself known, the God who reveals himself and loves us. We love God out of response to God's initiative. See, sometimes we get that mixed up. We think that, well, if you do this, this, and this, and you do this properly, and you do all the right things, then God will love you. But that's not the starting point. So God first loves us, we respond in love, and then we love one another. And Jesus himself tied these two things together. Our love for God and love for one another is inseparable. In the readings this weekend at Mass, especially from the second reading from Paul's letter to the Romans, they speak about love. St. Paul says, owe no one anything except to love one another, because when you love another person, you fulfill the law. He goes on to say that all the commandments are summed up in this commandment to love. And then in the gospel today, we have words of Jesus that reflect the way that the early church existed. And it sounds very foreign to us. I mean, Jesus is saying, if you've got a problem with someone else in the church, in the community, if someone sinned against you, go and talk to them and bring it up with them. And if they don't listen to you, bring another person. And if they don't listen to the two of you, then go tell someone else and deal with it. But it doesn't sound very much like how we usually do things in the church. It kind of describes a church where people actually hold each other accountable. They know each other in a way that perhaps would make us feel a bit uncomfortable. Even the first reading from the book of Ezekiel has the prophet speaking to the people of Israel in Babylon, and he's basically saying to them, I'm going to hold you responsible for one another's spiritual life, for your spiritual health. This sounds a bit strange. I mean, it doesn't exactly sound like Catholics Anonymous. That's kind of like what many parishes are like. We may feel that some of these things, the spiritual life of another parishioner, that's none of my business. But think about it, when we say that's none of our business, aren't we really echoing the ancient cynical question that Cain once asked God, am I my brother's keeper? And what's the Lord's answer this weekend in the readings? Yes, you are. You are. You are your brother's keeper. You are your sister's keeper. Christian community is essential if we're going to live out the fullness of what it means to love God, to love one another. But here's the critical question. How can we love one another if we don't know one another? I've often thought about a definition of Christian community, because how does it differ, say, from socializing? Well, here's my stab at it. Christian community is a network of relationships in which believers are accountable to and for one another for the response to God's call to holiness and mission. Now, I know that's a lot to unpack. Let me say it again. Christian community is a network of relationships in which believers are accountable to one another and for one another in responding to the call to holiness and mission. Here's the thing. All throughout the world, especially in the Western world, churches have been in decline for decades. It's not just in Dartmouth, it's not just in Nova Scotia, it's all over the world, and it's not just Catholics either. But I'll tell you, churches that are slowing down the decline and even reversing it, churches that are actually becoming healthy and growing, they all have one thing in common, that they are intentional about building community. The kind of community that I've described, the kind of community that the readings describe, where people know each other and actually love each other. They actually feel responsible for one another. They actually hold each other accountable. They're accountable for and to one another as well. Now the question for us as a parish is, how do we get there? Because if you think about the last time you were in Mass and you looked around, honestly, think about it as you looked around at the congregation, how many people did you actually know? Never mind love. I mean, I don't just mean know to be able to give a nod at Sobeys, but actually know the person. What are their joys and hopes? What are their dreams? What are their struggles? What are the burdens that they're carrying? What are the things they're struggling with? What are the joys in their lives? We've got a lot of work to do as a church to grow and go on the journey of growing as a community. You see, the discussions and the meetings and the planning that lie ahead of us as a parish, it can't just be concerned about finances and buildings and all of these things. We've got to also get to these other deeper realities. These are the foundational issues for us that we have to address as a church. And speaking of this, it's my plan, our plan, in the coming months to hold a series of meetings for all members of Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish, for anyone who actually cares about the future of our church. They're going to start on September 26th. There's going to be meetings in person, and there's going to be an online option as well. There's going to be 7 meetings. I'm going to give some more information about this in my Coffee with Father James video. You can check on it. I think it's already out there on the YouTube channel. And please spread the word about this. Let's begin to pray for these meetings. Spread the words. Please come and participate. There's going to be a time of prayer and discernment, discussion, reflection as we lay new foundations for the future of our church so that we can become a parish where people know and love one another, a parish where we know the love of God and we love God in turn. Thank you and God bless.